Well, if there's one thing that is clear, that as an MCU fan, you can't go without access on Disney Plus anymore. I mean, we have a character show up in Black Widow that we already know from the Falcon and Winter Soldier show, and the scene that the character is in is a direct tie-in to an upcoming Disney Plus show. I love that, but I can't afford it. I can imagine true MCU fans being left behind because they can't afford to miss that amount every month. Therefore, I call on Disney to at least consider releasing these shows on home media. Do it for the fans. Hello, and welcome to the Review of Champions. Today, we're going to talk about Black Widow, the newest addition to the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. And with me to discuss Black Widow are, all the way from Down Under, Shadowbiz.
Hi guys.
From the Great Beyond, voice only, Mr. Lord Deathman.
Hey everyone.
From Texas, the almighty Taylor First. And our guest on this panel, but basically regular member already, Mr. Jeff Sloboda from the MCU's Bleeding Edge.
Oh man, I love it. Love being a part of the team, and great job, like banging out my last name, like in an actual, somewhat like, close version there, Grandmaster. I mean, that was really good.
I tried. You can correct me later after we're done recording, okay? But before we start, I would like to ask you all to hit that like and subscribe button and maybe join our forum on sakar.freeforums.net. Also, please make sure to check out the YouTube channel of Jeff Sloboda, the MCU's Bleeding Edge. You will find the link in the description. And here it is, a spoiler warning. We're going to talk spoilers, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, go check that out first and then come back to the video. Okay, we're going to do a round of what we liked about Black Widow first. And I'm going to start with Taylor. Taylor, you saw Black Widow earlier today. What did you think of the movie, and specifically talk about what you liked about the movie?
I loved the movie. I thought it was great. I thought Scarlett Johansson was wonderful. I thought Florence Pugh was wonderful. I thought David Harbour was great. I thought Rachel Weisz was great. So as you can see, one of my likes is the cast. Everything about this movie was great. Virtually everything. It felt very James Bond, and she was even watching a James Bond movie in one scene, which is fantastic because they're acknowledging this is the type of movie you're watching. It's a James Bond movie, as opposed to, like, say, Captain America and the Winter Soldier was much more of a Jason Bourne or a Tom Clancy type movie. This was a James Bond type movie, complete with evil villain in a hidden lair floating up in the sky, and crazy evil henchmen, and Bond girls and everything else. Okay, so it was very much a Marvel's, the MCU's version of a James Bond movie. And overall, I thought it even had a Q. Exactly right. It even had a Q. It was great. They did an excellent job of setting it in that point in history of the MCU, back just prior to, right between Civil War and Infinity War. The story was good. The learning about Black Widow's life prior to the Avengers, very different than what I was expecting it was going to be. I did not see it coming. So I think they did a great job there. I think they did a great job with the special effects for the most part. The action was over the top and excellent, like a James Bond movie. The characters were all good, including the villains. Like I said, thank God we're back with the MCU in the theaters. And this was a great way to get us back after a year-long drought of MCU in the theaters. So I'll let everybody else talk about all the other stuff that was great about it. But perfectly happy with it.
Yeah, I think you've pretty much summed up my thoughts about it. But Biz, tell me, do you have anything to add to this love letter to Black Widow?
Yeah, like Taylor did a pretty good job with it. Yeah, I'd give it a solid 8 out of 10. Like I said before, I'm like a sucker for spy films. Like I was thoroughly entertained. I was kind of like half asleep watching this, and it kept me engaged. So yeah, thumbs up for me. Like Black Widow is a great action movie. Like I heard like some complaints that it didn't have enough action, but I didn't know what they were talking about because there was more than enough action in that film. So yeah, I liked it. It was no real complaints. Like I mean, but I'll get into that later. But yeah, like an overall good film.
Yeah, I thought it was a very fast-paced, action-heavy movie. It was really a roller coaster ride to me. At least it felt like that. Lord Deathman, I heard you were eager to talk about this movie, so I will give the word to you now.
Well, first of all, it's great to be here with my fellow champions on the podcast of champions. So thanks for having me. And yes, I have seen Black Widow twice at this particular point now. And I have to say that I really, really enjoyed the film. And I'm coming in, I'll admit, pretty biased. I'm a Black Widow stan. I have liked her since before the MCU and the comic books. And I'm a sucker for espionage films, much like Biz, you know, that sort of Bourne, you know, Mission Impossible, those genre films that have these incredible set pieces. I always enjoy myself when I go to see those movies. But in terms of likes for this film, you know, I'm really finding it hard to say what you might not have liked. I have a few, you know, things that were kind of like not so great for me about the film, but most of it is I love the action. I love those set pieces. I think they were immaculately crafted. They were extremely satisfying to me. And at no time did I feel like, oh, this doesn't have real stakes. That it seemed really brutal, exceptionally well choreographed. I really love the action set pieces. I also love the locations. I mean, this is a feast for the eyes, especially the first two acts. You're jumping from Budapest to Norway, and then you're all over the world with this, and they're showing you these huge, beautiful vistas. When, you know, not to give a huge spoiler away, that this is your chance to turn off, but when Nat and Yelena meet in that apartment in Budapest and you see it from the outside, you see this old European sort of apartment building. It just looked fantastic. So so, you know, the locations were beautiful. I also thought, you know, and I'm going to get, you know, kind of feminist here, but not too political. I just kind of like the idea that the girls were in charge of this movie, you know, with Yelena. I know everyone's been talking about Florence Pugh and her performance in this film, but I want to push the focus back to Scarlett Johansson because she did an incredible job here. She's vulnerable as Black Widow in this particular movie. There's a real sense of fatigue, weariness, and she's balancing that with humor, serious drama. I think, you know, there's a reason why Scarlett consistently tops the female action stars we have in the business today. She's just really good at what she does. And I really hope this isn't her last time, you know, playing the character. But I also love the cast, as Taylor pointed out. That was a huge plus for me. And frankly, I just thought the whole story was very engaging. I love to get this peek at what Black Widow's past was like. And it wasn't like, you know, I was a superhero from day one, kicking a lot of people's asses and all that kind of stuff. She had difficult choices to make. She made horrible mistakes in her past. I think she has probably the most intriguing backstory of all of the characters in the MCU. So she's not just the chick with the guns in the background of the Avengers. I think of her as a first-class Avenger, and this movie really validates my feelings on that. So those were my big likes for the films. Also loved all the MCU connections. Anytime they mentioned that, like something going on with the Avengers or, you know, these particular events, I love tying it back into Civil War. Just re-immersed me back in the world of the MCU, and I was jonesing. You know, like a lot of MCU fans, I was tapping the vein. I was like, I need a kick, and this was it. This was the hit that I needed, and getting back into the world, it just put a huge smile on my face. So lot to like about the film, but I want to hear what the rest of the champions have to say.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna break your heart a bit, but Scarlett Johansson actually said that it was her last ride as Black Widow in this movie. So, but we have a new Black Widow, the awesome Florence Pugh. I thought she was amazing in this movie. I think she stole the movie from Scarlett. But we're first gonna go to Jeff. Jeff, your initial thoughts.
Oh yeah, as far as Florence Pugh goes, they really elevated her in that film. Like they really spotlighted her the same way they did in these Disney Plus series with certain characters like Monica Rambeau. You know what I mean? Like they really kind of like set her up to where like she was at her best. Like they put her in the most effective spot possible. And
sorry to interrupt, but do you feel that MCU Phase 4, what we have seen so far, WandaVision, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki, and now Black Widow, is also setting up the future of the MCU with new characters, new heroes that will take over the torch from their old characters and will carry on the franchise for the next 10 to 12 years?
Yes, that's one thing I can honestly say is just that I don't want to take anything away from Florence Pugh and the Yelena Belova character. I agree. She was great in the film. Her comedic relief was on point all throughout the movie. It was a highlight for me. It gave an interesting element to the movie. And I feel like I didn't really realize or maybe scrutinize her really that much in the trailers and in pictures I'd seen of her. It was until I saw the movie that I realized how young she actually is. Like she is actually pretty young. She's like college age, like almost in that film. Like she's like 22, 23 years old. So I mean, she could like literally be Black Widow for 10, 15 years kind of. But I feel like, look, I mean, every time one of the panelists talks about the movie, it just it invokes things in me and brings reactions from me to where I've got like 75,000 different things I want to say about this movie, and I can't fit it all into this segment. So all I can really say is just that basically I feel like I'm not trying to put myself out there as I'm gonna get all crazy about this or whatever, and it's like the best thing that ever happened or something or whatever. But I do want to say that when I first sat down in the theater and watched the movie, I felt weird. I felt awkward. I didn't know how I should feel about it. Like I felt kind of like out of place in a way a little bit. I didn't feel connected to the film at first, in the first few minutes and whatnot. I felt kind of like weird, like awkward. And I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was because like the last MCU film I saw was the Spider-Man film, and it's been so long or whatever, or the pandemic and, all of it. But bottom line, I feel like, again, just like I mentioned, Kate Herron, Kate Shortland, did a freaking stupendous job with this film. Everybody involved in the film, making the film, did a great job. The screenplay by Eric Pearson was excellent. The writing was excellent. The dialogue flowed all throughout the film. There was no drops. There was no sags. There was nothing was boring. It was all interesting. And for me, I feel like if I had to mention something, very, I guess, different about the movie that really stood out to me, as a fan, that surprised the crap out of me, was Rachel Weisz and her character stepping up the way she did and everything. I didn't know what was going to happen in the movie. Thinking about it going into it, I was like, what's the plot going to be like? Like, who's going to be what and everything? So, when all of a sudden the script got flipped and, she was the inside guy, at the Red Room and everything and whatnot, who was, pulling the strings and everything and set it all up, I was like, wow. And, as far as the whole James Bond angle, the double face mask, face thing, shield or whatever, they had going on. Rachel Weisz and ScarJo was awesome. That really caught me off guard. I was not expecting that at all. That really got me. And when she freaking slammed her forehead into that table, I was like, hell yeah. You know what I mean? Like, that was awesome. Like, I'm sorry, but I think that if anybody feels like Florence Pugh, Yelena Belova stole that movie, then they need to see the movie again a second time or a third time. Like, I'm gonna see it tomorrow, because I feel like Lord Deathman kind of like already mentioned, I think that for me, I think that Scarlett Johansson as an actress is very subtle. She's not funny. She's very dry. You know what I mean? Like, that's just who she is. And that's how she plays Black Widow, which is very like comic book, organic, I guess, or realistic. And I feel like, as far as the, like Lord Deathman said, it being brutal, I feel like that really, really, really makes sense for the character, for Black Widow. Like, it makes sense it would be like that there would be death. There would be people getting beat up and or injured and stuff like that. And on top of that, I feel like from a comic book standpoint, that's very grounded. Because if Black Widow from the comics, there is killing. There is like sex. There is stuff like that. Like, that's how it is. So for me, I feel like, again, I don't want to go too long on this, but I feel like, look, I've been like holding this inside all day, and I've been up all night from watching this movie, and I've been thinking about this movie for like the last 12 hours straight. And the more that like I sit on it and like think about it, the more that it kind of sets in for me, and the depth of it sets in. And I feel like they did a really, 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 really wonderful job wrapping up her arc in the MCU. They did a great job with it. They really did. Like, they did it with a bang, with pizzazz, and not only that, but with humanity and emotion, like at a level that I did not expect going into the theater at all. I did not see that coming. So that's it. I mean, I just really felt like the whole movie flowed. It did. It flowed. The whole movie did. There was no lulls. It was never boring. For me, literally, I think that I don't even understand any of these negative reviews I've heard from other people on YouTube and stuff like that and everything, or in the media. I don't even get what they're talking about, because I think I think the movie's outstanding.
We're gonna talk about our dislikes a little bit later, but I wholeheartedly agree. It was an awesome movie. It had a very good pace, a very fast pace. Also, you hardly get time to breathe. Only basically in the middle, when they are at the farm, you get a little moment for 5 minutes where, but that's actually a very heartwarming and emotional scene, which brings out the best in all four actors involved. And I think that's the core of the movie, actually. What happened with that family, or artificial family, I should say, and coming to terms with that. And I think that's the core of this movie. And
perseverance. Perseverance.
I'm sorry, my English is not that good that word came to mind. But the third act is completely Bond, and I absolutely love it. And I'm siding with Jeff. I don't have much criticism on it. There's one little thing I do have to criticize, but I maybe it will come up on the panel when we talk about the things we did not like. They're little, because I think everybody is thinks this was an awesome movie, if I read the panel correctly. Well, let's start with Lord Deathman. Lord Deathman, were there things you didn't like about this movie?
Of course, I don't want to come on the show and say that this was a perfect movie. I found it highly entertaining. I found it really engaging. I found it exciting. But of course, there's one or two choices that creative people make that you are going to disagree with, right? I don't really feel like the MCU has done a start to finish perfect movie. I mean, a lot of them are, right? But it's not like every single one of them that comes out is like that. But, I really sort of wanted to, before I get to talking about my dislikes, I wanted to quickly go through some of the questions you're going to get from those jokers on the board, right? So I've seen Black Widow, and I kind of want to just put this out in the public world. Is Black Widow better than Captain Marvel, right? Somebody's going to ask that question. And, subjectively speaking, in my opinion, I'm going to say yes. I found that it is a better female-led superhero movie than Captain Marvel. And I think a lot of it is owed to Kate Shortland, who is just a better director than Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck. She
May
just
I
has...
interrupt for a second?
Sure.
This is actually I saw this from another Marvel guy on Twitter, and he's also a member of our board. The cast is 90% female, but I never have the moment that they beat you over the head. That they beat you over the head with it.
Absolutely.
It's just there. It makes sense. The cast is awesome. They do a great job. But the movie is filled with females, but it's not feminist in that sense. Then in the sometimes toxic feminism that can be, where men are all evil and women are always perfect. But no, actually, all the characters have flaws. All the characters have their problems and their good sides. And it actually didn't matter that the cast was 90% female. It didn't bother me at all. Actually, it made sense, basically. So I'm going to just put it out there. But continue with your...
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point that you bring up there, because a few of my dislikes are going to go into that type of territory. I think what you'll find what I have to say is somewhat surprising. But another one of the more popular questions that you're likely to get for people who are obsessed with comparing things is Black Widow better than Wonder Woman 1984? For my money, absolutely. This was just
that's not a debate. I'm sorry.
It's really hard to debate it, but someone's going to bring it up and going to be like, well, what did you think about it versus this movie? No disrespect to those filmmakers over in Wonder Woman 84 camp, but I think they just, hit the nail on the head when it came to a female-led superhero in Black Widow. So, and then you're going to get, where does Black Widow rank among the MCU films, right? That's going to be months and months worth of discussion. I'm putting it in the upper mid tier. So we've got 24 films. If you're breaking them up into 3 groups of 8, that middle group of 8, I think Black Widow is sort of high up in that, probably in the top 3 of that grouping of 8 films. But we'll get more specific on the board about it. And then, I of course, I want to touch on, is Black Widow a feminist film? I think that's going to be another, a friend of mine sort of said that, I read some stuff online. I know you're staying away from the reviews, Deathman, but I read some things online that says that, there's a Wonder Woman 84 level feminist fiasco that's going on with Black Widow. Couldn't find it. I watched the movie twice and I was like, I don't even know that Wonder Woman had a feminist fiasco or whatever going on in it. I know that Wonder Woman 84 doesn't really treat men very well in that film. It doesn't, you see a lot of guys fawning over Diana, and Gal Gadot is a beautiful woman. I don't want to make this review about a referendum or revisiting 84, but I think, it treated men in a certain way that some guys were kind of displeased with it. But no, you're not going to find any, feminist hardcore messaging in Black Widow. It's not that type of film. It is a female forward film is what I'm going to say about it. You're going to get a lot of women taking charge of situations in the film, but nobody's trading on, toxic femininity or sexuality isn't being pushed forward in these kinds of things. So we can kind of remove all that stuff in the discussion. And I think that'd be good for our audience who's listening to know if you're considering going to see the movie and you've sat through all of our spoiler talk. So what didn't I like about this film? It really came down to two things for me. One was I think that the first two acts of this film worked beautifully for me in terms of a consistent tone, felt like Winter Soldier, and in many places it one-upped Winter Soldier. They took the SUV battle with Sam Jackson in the streets against Hydra agents, and they upped it with like a tank rolling through Budapest, girls on motorcycles. I was like, wow, they really kind of ramped it up. Kate Shortland was like, yeah, I'm going to outdo those Russo brothers. I'm going to try my best. And in some cases, she actually did. But what I didn't like is by the time you get to the third act, they use a couple of mechanics that I'm not a fan of in storytelling. One is when you're kind of flashing backwards on how you put the plan together. You've seen that kind of story mechanic where you're in the middle of telling the bad guy how you did everything, but you're showing the audience what happened in the past, how we worked out the plan that we quickly cut away from when it was happening in real time. So I'm not saying that was a huge problem or that it took me out of the movie. I'm just saying typically I feel like I've seen that kind of mechanic in movies about one too many times, and I felt like that was a little bit of a downside for Black Widow. And then my second and probably only other problem, major problem with the film, I should say, is that I like Dreykov as a villain. I thought Ray Winston did a fantastic job. His Russian accent, does it hold consistently throughout the film? Probably not. Some of his English roots kind of come back in there, but he's appropriately sinister, menacing. You feel the sociopathy with this guy. Like every time he goes to touch Scarlett Johansson, you feel kind of disgusted with his like sausage fingers and and like, he just seems like a really kind of slimy guy. But I didn't think that his plan I didn't think it made a lot of sense. And I get that he's kind of fighting a shadow war, trying to grab up power all over the globe. But I was like, when I really think about this, it's kind of like a very generalized, ambiguous plan that doesn't marry itself specifically to anything that was relevant to Black Widow. It's like, I'm just kind of preparing myself to do evil things, y'all. So get ready. But again, not enough to take me out of the film, not enough for me to give the film like a wholly bad grade, and not enough for me to even say that I feel Dreykov was a bad villain. I just feel like parts of his plan might have been glossed over in a certain way that I could have used a little bit more information about it. And then the only other minor nit that I had about the film that I did not like was sort of the ending. I felt like the film ended right when Natasha sort of breaks away from her family. They've sort of resolved some of their issues. They know they have more work to do, but Natasha knows that this next phase, meeting with Ross and his team, is something she has to do alone. And you have this perfect shot of Scarlett Johansson kind of looking at the convoy of SUVs, and there's a kind of like defiance and resignation in her face. Like, I'm not going to be able to take on this many dudes by myself. Like, this is the one where diplomacy is going to have to win out over me doing a lot of wire works and leg throws and all of that. And I felt like that would have been a perfect way to just smash to credits. But then they kind of took you to like a 2 weeks later type thing, and you see her with the agent, and he's procured the Quinjet and all of that. I really felt like that should have been after credits material, and Shortland had an opportunity to kind of end on this super heroic note right there for me. But those were the only dislikes that I had for the whole film. Overall, I thought it was really strong. And again, I put it in that upper mid tier of MCU movies. It's not going to topple Winter Soldier, just because Winter Soldier start to finish is a super cohesive film. I don't know how they did it, but And maybe Ray Winstone isn't exactly Robert Redford in terms of his ability to be a bad guy. But I think that has a lot to do with the fact that he was introduced really late in the film. As far as I'm concerned, you don't really get the heel turn from Winter Soldier that was so kind of surprising with that film. But I will cede the floor to the rest of the panelists, and those really represent the only issues that I might have had with the film.
Yeah. To counteract your problem with the 2 weeks later scene, Marvel did opening credits. What they usually do after a movie, you get those animated closing credits, but now they moved them to the beginning of the movie. So basically, the 2 weeks later scene was a mid-credit scene. To me, it felt like a mid-credit scene. They actually cut to black for a few seconds before
They did.
yeah, and I
Yep.
think it was to distinct that this actually was a first post credit scene or mid credit scene, how you want to put it. Only if they would have followed their normal routine, their normal formula, pun
You would have
intended,
gotten animated credits,
and then
and
you
then
will
you
get
would
the
have
2 weeks
gotten that.
later the
Yeah,
normal
that
credits,
little.
and then the credit scene we got. So just to point that out, because of the changed way this movie was set up and edited, that may have happened. Jeff, do you have any dislikes? And if so, what are they?
Absolutely not a single one.
Okay. Well, then we're done. Easily. Yeah. If you don't
No,
have,
See you next week, Jeff. No.
got a point or two to make, just to like have something to contribute. But no, I'm seriously like I'm again, I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid here. Like nobody like drugged me before the show or whatever. Like I'm not whatever. I mean, I'm telling you right now, I don't know like if I got enchanted or something or whatever, like after the movie last night or something, or maybe because I like didn't sleep last night. I'm like my critical
hanging out with
thinking is
Sylvie.
off. Yeah. But no, like I'm serious. I'm telling you, I thought about this hours after I watched the movie when I finally like again let it set in on me mentally and like kind of like decompressed and took it in because that's kind of how I have to do things with my traumatic brain injury and everything. Like it takes me a while to because of my neurological deficits to like actually incorporate and like take in films and like TV shows and stuff. Stuff doesn't just hit me like right off the bat. There's a little bit of a delay there. So which can be like interesting at times. Like honestly it can be, but for me I feel like I really, really, really cannot even think of anything at all that I detected at all during that movie that I think is wasn't done well. I really think it's just a standout movie. I'm not going to try to like rate it or compare it with anybody or anything like that as far as like where its place is at in the MCU and all that. It's too soon for that. It's too early. I don't want to go there. I don't want to like.
Probably will need to see it once or twice more.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to add that kind of like weight and that kind of baggage to like the movie at this point. I don't want to. I want it to stand alone and be what it is, and like let people enjoy it. Like we're supposed to with these films. Like I enjoyed it, and it brought back the emotional connection for me with the MCU again for the first time that I haven't had with Disney Plus at all, really. Maybe with WandaVision a little bit with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, not so much with Loki. With Black Widow, because it's ScarJo, because it's it's Natasha, original Sixth Avenger. There's that emotional connection there for me where like I really care about that character. I care about like Scarlett Johansson. Like I respect the hell out of her, and I feel like as far as like I typically don't always align with Lord Deathman when it comes to the whole feminist angle and like that whole aspect of like the films, but I will say that I definitely agree with Lord Deathman on this one 100% because like honestly I saw The Critical Drinker on YouTube, who's actually one of my favorite filmmakers, made a video that I didn't watch because I didn't want Black Widow spoiled at all for me before when I went to see it. Talking about how like the film was some kind of feminist, deal or whatever. Look, anybody who has any common sense and intuition at all, knows that when it comes to like the Black Widow character in the MCU or like the comic book Black Widow, Natasha would not go home at the end of a night at the bar with anybody but an alpha male. You know what I'm saying? Like, she's not going to go to bed with like some freaking like weak sauce dude. Like, and Yelena Belova, like, come on, man. You honestly think Yelena Belova is going to go home with a freaking beta soy boy type guy? Like, come on now. Hell no. You know what I mean? So, like, at that point, it's that simple. Like, how can you even make that? How can you even come up with that premise at that point that some kind of feminist vehicle or something? When in reality, the two stars of the film would go home with like the fucking captain of the cheerleading, the captain of the football team. So like, that's all I have to say. Bottom line, last words on that. Zero fault with Black Widow.
Okay, fair enough. Taylor, did you have any dislikes?
The only thing I disliked about it, and it's very small, is in a couple of the fight scenes, they did the shaky cam thing, and I really hate shaky cam. It wasn't as bad as I've seen it in a lot of other movies, but it was there, and it did make it a little bit hard to see what was happening in a couple of the fight scenes or at a couple of points in the fight scenes. So that's really my only actual...
I had that in the fight in the Budapest apartment
Right.
a few times where I was like, whoa, steady.
Yeah, I couldn't tell which widow was hitting the other widow at a couple of points. Yeah. But that's my only real complaint. And overall, again, there's just so many good stuff about this movie. I also just wanted to point out, I mentioned the James Bond before, and it's very much James Bond with the exotic locations, but real locations, not Wakanda or something like that. Real locations like James Bond uses, and all the fancy European architecture and the Norwegian, forests and everything. But the James Bond movie that she was watching happened to be Moonraker, which of course is the one that gets lampooned and hated more than probably any other. Out of every James Bond movie they could have had her watching, she was sitting there enjoying Moonraker, which I happen to love Moonraker, but she was watching that. But on the same side, yes, this was a James Bond movie where the third act went total James Bond with the evil lair in the sky and the unstoppable, hulking, intimidating henchman who turned out, of course, to be the daughter of the villain. And then the thing crashing to the ground after the big battle. All that happened. But overall, this was a very serious movie. Yes, it had comic relief and some great comic lines in it. But overall, this was a very serious movie. All right, the trauma that Natasha and Yelena had gone through, and Yelena had only in this movie gotten out of it. She had been brainwashed, and only when she got the gas in the face did she have a mind of her own at that point. So she had just been released from the most traumatic experience anyone could imagine. It was serious, and it really stuck. Plus, then the dynamics between their only thing they ever remembered as being their parents and themselves, and why did you leave me? Why? You mean it wasn't real? Because we thought it was real the whole time, and in fact it was real for Red Guardian, even though he couldn't say it. But it was real for him at some point. So and then like Jeff said, oh my God, the scene where she breaks her own nose. How freaking badass! How badass can you get?
You can't get more badass. You said it straight yourself.
Right. I don't see it. I've seen some of the complaints online as well. I usually avoid that stuff, but yeah, it's just ridiculous. Some of the complaints that are out there. This movie gave everything anyone could have possibly wanted. sometimes I think about, these guys complaining, and I'm like, what do they want? Do they want to write it themselves?
Usually what they come up with is not very good. So
Right,
let's
and
just do let the creative people do their thing, and you don't have to like everything.
Yeah.
Biz.
A lot of times they write, like I said, they write complaints, but they don't offer how to do it better, because they couldn't do it better if you gave them $1 million.
Yeah, and that's why they're online complaining.
Yeah, exactly. Biz, do you have any dislikes about Black Widow?
Yeah, I do, but they're not like major like cons or anything. But I would like to mention Taskmaster. Like with some of the complaints with him, like well, the thing is, even in the comics, he was just a guy for hire, like an assassin for hire, I believe. And even in the movie, he had a small role because he was basically just the pretty much the bus boy for the main villain of the film. So I don't understand the complaints about Taskmaster. I mean, he was just the vehicle for that main villain, and I thought he was pretty awesome. I thought like he was robotic, and it made sense because he was under mind control. He had a good look, so I didn't feel like he was underdeveloped because he was just he had a role to play, and he did that certain role. Now, as for and also I'd like to mention Red Guardian. That guy is priceless. I would like to see him any day. Like give me more of Red Guardian. That guy was hilarious. And also like with some of like the comedy in the film, like for example, I noticed one complaint where they said like I even made the complaint myself at times where sometimes MCU uses comedy to kind of ruin certain like dramatic moments or more heavier elements. But for example, with the hysterectomy, I noticed that complaint. They turned that into a joke. I thought it fit well because these guys are like spies. These guys are super tough people. Like, of course, they're going to have some dark humor surrounding it. So I thought it made sense for that joke to be in there.
Well,
Now,
actually,
as in
I didn't think that was so comedic at all when Yelena was talking about the removing of her uterus and her ovaries. But of course, they finished it off with a joke. But that's
all the humor was very organic. I thought,
very much so.
And I mean, yeah, sometimes Marvel overdoes it. At least I can understand why people say that. At least, but in this case, I didn't think the humor was too much in any case in this movie. Busy, you have anything more?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like I was gonna address the woke thing as well. Like, I mean, you can see that in like any film if you really want to pick it apart. Like, for example, you can see like the girl with the blue hair if you really want to, or like the all-female cast. But like, I mean, how many movies do we have like with that many females? I mean, I can let that go. I mean, it's also a specialized program. I mean, there are male spies, obviously. Like, for example, Daniel Harbour. Like, they had that whole that like with that show, like they were like basically sleeper agents. Like obviously there are male spies around, and also like with, for example, when she was confronting what's his name, Dreykov, saying like, oh, he's like a weak male, because she was trying to attack him psychologically. It was tactical because she was trying to get her nose broken, so
exactly.
she couldn't smell him, and then could like punch him and stuff like that.
It was to get him to tell her the secrets of how to, of the control panel and how he was controlling.
Yeah, exactly that too. Yeah.
I don't think she thinks he's a weak person at all. I think she thinks he's very dangerous and should be stopped. So I think it was just tactic at the moment. So yeah, no, I don't see the woke thing at all in this movie. I think that's a whole bunch of bull crap. Anyway, yeah, I'm sorry. Some YouTubers may say that, but this YouTuber will say, sorry, no woke stuff going on in this movie. You're an idiot if you think so. Sorry.
Absolutely. And let me tell you, there are a lot of woke movies out there, and I call them out online a lot. Okay, there are woke movies that are just stupid. This is not one of them. And to say it is, like you said, you just have to be wanting it to be woke to sit there and say that it
You know
is.
what it would have been Rogue if there were also male Black Widows in the Widowverse then in the Red Room. Then it would have been woke.
Yeah.
But anyway, Lord Deathman, you had a follow-up comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to craft a special message for the Taskmaster fanboys out there. And Taskmaster has a following as a character. If you read comic books, and especially if you come from the 90s generation, he's a character that kind of oddly started with a very cartoonish kind of gimmick, where when you first saw him, he's got a bow and arrow and a sword and a shield, and he's supposed to be this amalgamation of all these different Avengers characters. Shortly after that, they introduced the photographic reflexes. But, you know, if you're man enough to admit that you've ever been involved in like MCU role-playing games or, you know, RPGs, then you can safely admit to the fact that you've probably had a conversation that went something like this. You know, hey dudes, who's the best hand-to-hand combatant in the Marvel universe? You know, somebody's going to bring that up. And then, you know, there's always the same list of people that get bought up: Iron Fist, Daredevil, Wolverine, Shang-Chi, probably Frank Castle. You know, there's a couple of guys. Captain America would probably go on that list. And then somebody in the conversation goes, but dude, man, what about Taskmaster? There's always that guy, right? What about Taskmaster? He has photographic reflexes and he can fight just like all of them. So you have your Taskmaster fanboys. And I want to say that I'm sympathetic with them and kind of understand that maybe their character got undercut in some way that, you know, didn't represent him in the best light. But I had no problems whatsoever with Taskmaster. I was really surprised at the turn. You know, I was with a friend who was also shocked, and they were like, wow, this is kind of horrific that, you know, it's kind of like this drone version of Dreykov's daughter. But like I said, you know, for all the wounded Taskmaster fans, I want to give them a little bit of hope, because I think that the Taskmaster protocol, as it's set up in the MCU, has room to continue. You know, like it can evolve. Maybe you will get your Tony Masters and, you know, his photographic reflexes, and he'll be able to do kung fu. Like we all know Wolverine always wins, right? Like, well, at the end of that discussion, Wolverine is always number one because he can just go berserk and kill everybody. So I just want to give a little solace to the Taskmaster fans out there.
Well, thank you for that. Jeff, you had a follow-up comment?
Just that I think that I was thinking to myself that in a way, just in like a you know, kind of a quasi way, I guess. You know, I wouldn't say it's a direct comparison, but I feel like when I think about the Black Widow film, I think about a graphic novel. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of how like I look at the Black Widow film. Instead of a James Bond spy kind of like angle, what I picked up and what really stood out to me was like a graphic novel-y feel to it, like a The Crow kind of feel to it, you know, like a The Punisher kind of type vibe to it, that like I also felt kind of connected to Captain America Winter Soldier in a way. Like I felt like there was a very light correlation there where maybe it was the pacing or like the spy, you know, James Bond type stuff, that type of, and the pace of it, you know, or whatever. But I felt like there was I don't know, just a small kind of similarity that I felt, kind of, that I think makes sense if you think about it from a Marvel Studios standpoint, that they would try to kind of take some pieces or some tropes and inject them kind of, you know, or model some stuff, you know, off of the Captain America stuff with the Black Widow film. You know, just because of the connections and the ties with Natasha and Steve Rogers, you know, and the Captain America films and everything. But yeah, I mean, I think that it's really fun listening to everybody's comments on the movie. I love like the shared like optimism and like how much we all like love the film and everything and whatnot. I think that's great. I feel like again, I'm really at a miss right now as to like when I finally do bump into somebody in real life sometime soon in the next 2 weeks or whatever that's like, oh, the Black Widow film sucked or whatever, I'm just gonna be like how? Like, I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, I
Yeah.
mean, like, I don't get it. Like, what didn't deliver for you? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, seriously, I
Then
just
there,
don't.
there probably would have. There's not a sort of a superhero god standing around making speeches about dark stuff and the way life should be. In it.
Oh, real quick, Grandmaster, I just want to mention Lord Deathman. If you ever bring up freaking comparing Captain Marvel to the Black Widow film again, I'm done. I'm out of here, man. I'm done. I'm hanging up my microphone. That's it.
I
Okay.
promise you, Jeff, it will never happen again.
Hey, hashtag Team Carol Danvers.
Grandmaster, you're going to have a lot of hard modding to do on the board because you know the usual suspects are setting up those threads right now.
Bring
I
them on.
might be one of them.
I will just let them because they have the right to their opinion. So
They can take me on when I'm down. I'll dye my hair blue too and like take them on.
Jeff, consider it done. You will get
Yeah.
no more comparisons. But I bring it up really because certain fans are kind of obsessed with the ranking and comparing this and that, and I get it. Like your mind becomes a tangle of like box office and similarly themed movies from different corporations, and you know, I don't know what it is that makes a lot of the folks do that, but I was like, let me just address some of this stuff and get it out of the way, even though it's stuff that I don't care about. I don't put things in a list. I don't, you know, rank things. I don't really enjoy comparing this movie that was made in like 2001 to that one that was made in 1901. You know, I take things as they are, as standalone pieces of entertainment. Now, the MCU is linked. There are a lot of movies and a lot of shared events, but still, you know, like the constant reshuffling and re-ranking really seems like a pointless endeavor to me. You either enjoy these films or you don't, in my mind, and then you move on.
well, I will promise you that I will not rank Black Widow this weekend. I will wait till next weekend when the movie is done. Then I will do both right away. But I love to rank things, and
I know you
weird
do,
ranking.
Grandmaster. I know you
There's
do.
no other option but to move on from Captain Marvel. Where the hell else do you go?
Well, I still enjoy Captain Marvel. Anyway, this will conclude our review for Black Widow. We thoroughly enjoyed it. We loved it, and yeah, you noticed that during our talk we hardly have any critique on it, but I hope you will forgive us. We're MCU fans after all. Before we finish, I would like to ask you all to hit that subscribe button and notification bell on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter, like our Facebook page. Join the forum on Sakar, sakar.freeforums.net. That way, you will never have to miss us, and we won't have to miss you. I'll thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time for our next movie review. Maybe the Suicide Squad. Bye.
How